Hello, everyone. My name is Andrei, and today I'm going to show you how it's an easy way to write automated tests in Java. I mean UI tests that open a browser or mobile application and start clicking all these button texts and so on. A few words about me. I'm a software developer from Estonia, Tallinn, from company Codeborn, and I like open source projects, open source product frameworks. I lead a few open source projects, and I especially love unit tests, test-driven development, extreme programming, clean code, agile, and all stuff like that. So, feel free to discuss with me all these topics. Here are my contacts. This is Twitter account, site, and so on. And among others open source projects, I created Selenide. This is a popular open source library for writing UI tests, and I'm going to show it today. Just to create, to share my feeling. This is my city, Tallinn. So you are welcome to visit us at any time. And the plan for today is a short introduction to Selenide. What is this? How it looks like, a short introduction to some basic features of Selenide, briefly how to write mobile tests in Selenide, and maybe if you have time, I will show how to run tests in clouds, but it's optional already. So for the background, what the topic is, that many of you do write automated tests, and for the last 15 years or like that, people basically had very few options to write tests. Mostly they wrote tests using Selenium framework, and it was not convenient for many reasons. So first of all, if you write tests not in Java, but in JavaScript or Python, then you have many obstacles when you write tests in Selenium, because you had to start Java server, Java grid, whatever. It was all very complex, especially for non-Java guys. But even if you write tests in Java, still using Selenium was not trivial, because Selenium needs from you to write quite a lot of boilerplate code. We will see some examples later. And the real reason is that, later, few years ago, there appeared another tool for writing tests. It's called Playwright. It's very, very popular nowadays. Again, it's not always perfect. It might be a very good choice for JavaScript developers if you write tests in JavaScript, but in other languages, maybe not so good. It has its own complexity and it has its own constraints. But still, it's very popular nowadays because Selenium was not so much convenient. But let me describe briefly why Selenium was not convenient, because actually, by definition, Selenium is not a tool for testing. Actually, Selenium is very low-level tool for driving a browser. Basically, it has only three commands, like open browser, click something, close browser. It's not actually a framework for testing. And that's why around Selenium there appeared another library specifically for testing, and this is called Selenide. This is what I'm talking about. So my point is that instead of using Selenium, which is not a suitable tool for testing, use please Selenide, especially if you write tests in Java, and you will see that it's actually very convenient. So what is Selenide? Selenide is a testing library powered by Selenium or written on top of Selenium in Java, Kotlin, Groovy, and so on languages, which gives you a very short or concise API for writing tests. And it helps you to make your tests stable, because it's a very common problem that tests are not stable. Tests are flaky. But Selenide helps you to make your tests more stable. And it has built-in features for testing, like automatic screenshots. It has built-in matchers for checking texts, attributes, and so on. Everything you wish. And let's start from very basic syntax. To start writing automated browser test in Selenide, it's actually very easy. how it looks like. You just write usual unit tests in Java, like add test and all. You can use whatever, G, unit testing G, whatever framework, some Kotlin or Groovy framework, no matter. Then syntax is very easy. To open a browser, you just need to call methods open. Very easy. Like it's much more short, much more shorter compared to Selenium, where we had to create WebDriver, initiate some WebDriver in binary instance, Chrome options, and so on. So this all is not needed anymore by default in Selenide. You can just click call method open, and that's it. Browser is opened. Now, using method $, you can find some element. Again, you can find it by name, by ID, by class, by whatever, by text even. And the first action, you can do something with this element. You can click it, you can put in some text or some value, you can select some option, and so on. And that's it. So the test is very, very easy to write and easy to read. You can click some elements, yeah. You can find element by ID. Here you can find element by some class name, and so on. And this is a very important part in every test, some assertions. Selenide has built-in assertions, which are implemented in like BDD style, behavior-driven development. You don't say like assert something, but you say that this element should have text like this text. So it's like readable in human English language. Like that some element should be visible, should not be visible, should appear, should have text, should be enabled, and so on. So this is how the test looks like. Let me demonstrate how I can run this test. This is we have quite a lot of like sample projects in GitHub. You can find, for example, in GitHub found organization Selenide examples, and there is a lot of like simple tests or test samples. This is the most simple test. As you can see, we open a browser with other Selenide.org. We find some element by text, click it, and we assure that now we have like more than 8 users. Let's even try to debug it, to run it. Yeah, it's just plain old good JUnit test. Now it will start the browser. In the very beginning, it might take a little bit time because Selenium needs to download WebDriver binary in the background, but this all is hidden from you. You don't need to like bother about this. So where is the browser? I don't understand. Aha, okay. Now we have a browser. Okay, it was hidden by default, sorry. Anyway, browser is currently running in headless mode, but it's not important. Actually, browsers here in headless mode is by default is very convenient to run like without disturbing you. We can even debug a little bit. We can see that we have some elements here. We can even investigate what was HTML code of this found element or text. Yeah. You can assure that this element by text users was actually found. This was a link, actually. Now we are going to click this link. Probably we will go to some other page. And now we can debug even that we have found few elements. Describe method is needed only for debugging, so it might be a little bit slow if you have lots of elements, like in our case. Yeah. So yes, this is just for debugging, but actually, usually you don't need to put breakpoints. You don't need to debug. You just run the test, and this test runs very quickly. Just tests your site. Okay, we can continue. So the test was very easy to write, and easy to read, and easy to run. And yes, here is a link if you want to find more examples. So just to bring some examples of why it's a good idea to use Selenide for shorter syntax. How Selenide fights against boilerplate code. Short syntax. in Selenide, to just find an element, it's very easy to just call method $, for example, using tag name. If you had to write tests in Selenium to achieve the same result, you had to write quite a long line of code, like the same result, much more longer. Sure, it was not convenient. Yeah. Another example, if you need to check that some element is visible, in Selenide, you just need to write some element should be visible. That's it. To achieve the same result in Selenium, you had to write something like that. Assert true is displayed, and so on and so on and so on. Much longer. Another example, even worse, if you want to check that some element does not exist. Again, in Selenide, you write just element should not exist. Very easy, very simple. While in Selenium, you had to write something like that. Not really convenient, not really readable. I know that people can do it, and people used to extract such code to their own helper methods, and so on and so on. People tend to call it a testing framework. They tend to create testing frameworks in every new project. But actually, it's not needed anymore because Selenide is already a collection of such helper methods, let's say so. And it has already a ready syntax for writing short tests. Yeah, no need. You don't need anymore to write such constructions like try catch and entry, try and loop and so on and so on. It's already out of the box. So about looping, yeah, people often did in their tests some for loops or some retry. Because sometimes test might be flaky because the element is not yet visible, but it will become visible after a few milliseconds. And test can randomly fail because of that. Now in Selenide, the problem is solved. So Selenide does make your test much more stable thanks to its built-in weightings. We call it smart weightings or built-in weightings. How it works? When you write some check, like some element should be visible, actually this should be method contains a built-in weighting if needed. In old plate Selenium, you could do the same by writing such a long line of code. Basically, it means weighting. So how the smart weightings work? When you write a code, any of these should checks, like some element should be visible, or some element should have text, or some element should disappear, or should not be enabled or selected, something like that. In this case, any of this should method will wait a little bit if needed. By default, it will wait up to 4 seconds. It's like default timeout. So the Selenide works like this. It checks if this element is visible already. If it's already visible, then this line will work very quickly, like 0 milliseconds. But if this element is not yet visible, then Selenide will wait a little bit, check again, wait a little bit, check again. So this is smart waiting, like retry mechanism, let's say so. By default, it waits up to 4 seconds, and of course, you can configure this timeout using system property or Selenide configuration parameter or whatever. There are a few ways how you can override it if needed. So just to summarize the first part, Selenide gives you a very short syntax for writing tests and gives you very good out-of-the-box mean to make your tests much more stable than usually. It doesn't fix all the flaky tests, but most of them. So let's continue with highlighting some basic features of Selenide. Error messages. First of all, what every testing library needs is reporting about errors. When some check fails, what happens? For example, if you want to check that some alert like does not exist or doesn't contain word error, what if at some moment this alert actually contains word error? So the test should fail, right? And the test fails with a readable English message. So yeah, we tried to formulate it so that it's very readable and understandable. Like element should not have text error, but in fact it had text error. That's why the test failed. So Selenide, yeah, generates a readable error message. That's the point. That is easy to read and understand. Additionally, Selenide will take an automated screenshot and HTML of this page, like image and HTML, will save them and will append them to the error message. So you will see error message like this, and you can quickly click this link and see the screenshot and see what actually happened there. Yeah, so it's easy to debug tests that failed and quickly understand why it failed. Moving on to the next features. You already saw method $, that finds one element, but Selenide already has method $2 that returns collection of elements. And this is a very convenient way to check multiple elements at once with just one call. For example, this method, $2 error, finds all elements with class error. And you can check that there was 3 of such elements, for example. Very easy. And by the way, this check is very fast, because instead of loading each element one by one, Selenide loads them with just one call, and it's very fast call. Yeah. Also, you can find not only size of collection, but for example, texts of collection. Yeah. So this is a very good way to write short but readable test that checks a lot of things with just one line. Very powerful test. Also, you can filter collections. You can find, for example, all employees and filter only visible employees, because some of them might be hidden currently. And you can, for example, check that there currently is only 4 visible employees on the screen. This is a good way, for example, to test filtering of elements on the UI page. This was just a short introduction. Actually, collections have much more like features and matchers and checks and so on. Just to briefly show what more features Selenide has. There is quite a lot of features. Just to name few of them, Selenide has built-in locators for finding elements by text and case-insensitive text and so on and so on. Data, test, attributes, everything. Selenide can generate test report in the end of the test, so you can easily see what happened there, which buttons were clicked, which were not clicked, and so on. You can, inside of your test, like from your test, you can download a file. You can upload a file, by the way. Yeah, you can use page objects. If you use Selenium, you most probably are familiar with annotations like find by. In Selenide, you can also use them, and even you can create page objects in even more simpler manner. Yeah, it's much easier to create page objects in Selenide. You can run tests in parallel. Of course, parallelization is supported. You can even create your DSL, domain-specific language, for writing tests by using Selenide custom comments and custom conditions. Yeah. And yes, Selenide allows you to write automated tests for mobile applications as well, Android, iOS, and you can even reuse the same test for web and for mobile applications sometimes. And yes, Selenide gives you some features for speeding up your test. For example, fast set value, fast check of collections, and others. And you can check some additional details of web page, not only web elements, but for example, local storage, session storage, URL of page, URL of frame. You can check contents of clipboard, and so on. Yes, Shadow DOM is also supported, if you know what is this. And let me briefly navigate through some of these features. We don't have so much time to cover everything, but some of these features. Finding elements sometimes is not easier. Yes, the most easier way is just to find element by ID. and we have like several ways to do it. I personally like this first option, just using this symbol. Sometimes people like the longer option more, like explicitly saying that I am finding element by ID. It's also possible, why not? Also, you can find element by class name. Again, there is a longer alternative. Finding element by name, you can find. Again, there is another alternative. You can't find element by xpath. We have a method $x for finding by xpath, which is short. Yeah. These are like built-in locators that are also in Selenium as well. But Selenide also suggests like more locators, like more powerful locators. They are collected in the class selectors. You can just import static selectors and use the power of Selenide. For example, you can find element by attribute, in this case by attribute type, or by attribute read only, right? Or you can find element by title, or by value, or by data test ID. So all these options are possible. And just to bring this concept, if you are not familiar with, nowadays it's very popular to add specific attributes for testing, like this. Very often people call this attribute test ID or data test ID or something like that. And yes, you can add these attributes to HTML, to your page, to your web pages, and use this element attribute explicitly to find elements in your tests. This is a popular technique, like recommend. Selenide also allows you to find elements by text. It might be useful when you cannot have access to HTML code and you cannot add some testing attributes to elements. Then you can find elements by text. Often it's the only way how you can find something. Selenide has few built-in methods. For example, $by text searches the element by text, by full string. And there is similar method with text that searches the element by partial text, by substring. And there are also similar methods for finding elements case insensitive. That might be also like very useful. There is more helper methods for finding elements inside of Shadow DOM and so on and so on. The next question about navigation. Sometimes you need to find a parent of some element, and Selenide provides method parent, very convenient. Also, it provides method closest, which actually means like grandparent. Like it finds the nearest table that contains our element, this current element. How to use it? Sometimes it's very convenient to build a chain of selectors, something like that. For example, you can find some specific cell in the table. You can find the containing table itself. And you can find some another row in this table, and you can find some another cell inside of this row. So it might be very, very useful. When you don't have some specific ID in element, and you can find one element, knowing where another element is located. Sometimes it might be very, very powerful chain of selectors. Yeah. What's next? Reports. So it has built-in reports. By default, it's a very simple text report, which looks like this. So you can just add one annotation to your test, something like add text report, and you will see a report like this in the end of your tests. You can configure either you want to see this report in the end of failing test or in the end of every test. You can set up it easily. And why this report is useful? It shows you which actions did your test perform. Like it opened a browser, it found some element, it clicked some element, and so on. It might be useful to detect that you probably are doing some unneeded steps, like in this case. Actually, the test opened the browser twice in this report. Sometimes you can realize that, oops, we have actually extra steps that are not needed. We can speed up our tests. And you can see these numbers. This is the time, duration of every step. This might be very convenient to find out why your tests are slow. You can find out the slow step. In this case, we see that the opening the very first page took more than 4 seconds. So this, like initial page, this dashboard page is very heavyweight. It contains a lot of probably images and so on. And we actually didn't need to open it because we immediately open it the next page. So yeah, it might be convenient to make a test faster, to analyze what's happening. Yeah, and to enable this test, this report, you can put one annotation. In case of JUnit 5, it's extension. You can write extend with text report extension, easy. Again, there are some samples here. If you like to use not text report, but some more like beautiful report, there is integration of Allure. You probably know Allure report is one very popular framework for building reports, and it has integration with Selenide. Yeah, just one line of code, and you will see a report like this in the end of your tests. This is Allure report. Yeah, it's like convenient to show every step, to click it open, to see the screenshot inside in the end of every test, and so on. So yes, it's also possible. What's next? Working with files. It's very often when you write automated test, for example, for some banking application or something similar, you need from your test to upload a file or download a file. For example, download some report. And yes, it's possible. Selenide provides such methods to upload a file. Again, we have a method upload file. Using $, you find the input with type file, and you call method upload file. We have multiple options. For example, you can upload multiple files with just one single method call, or you can upload file from class path, and yeah, something like that. There are multiple options. Also, you can download a file. For example, it's often very good to download some PDF report, for example, and test it inside of your test. Verify the contents on this file, for example. The easiest way to download the file is just to call method download. In this case, this $report, this is some link, for example, which causes downloading of the file. Yeah, so if you click this link, download starts. The easiest way to just call method download, but there are more advanced options as well. For example, you can call method download, giving it some options like using which method for downloading, using which timeout, which filter, like which type of file you are expecting to filter out unneeded files, and so on. Selenide, just to briefly mention that Selenide has several different methods for downloading files. It's actually a big and complex topic. Yeah. And the typical scenario looks like this. You call download method to get the PDF file, for example, and then you can assert that this PDF, for example, has the expected name or has the expected contents, something like that. In this specific example, I'm using another library created by me also, which is called PDF test, that allows you testing internals of PDF files. There is another similar library, XLS test, for testing Excel files. Just one recommendation if you need to test files. Selenide has lots of other checks. For example, you can easily check URL of current page. And again, all these methods have similar parameters like expected value, like timeout, because sometimes this URL might be loaded quite slowly. And again, if such a check fails, then Selenide will take automated screenshot, will generate a readable error message. All these standard features are also supported here. This is what we don't have if you use just plain Selenium. Similarly, you can check not only URL, but also, for example, clipboard contents. For example, you can check that clipboard has this text inside, or again with some timeout, and you can even set some content to clipboard and so on. Similar thing, you can check contents of local storage, something like that. Yeah, you can check just item or item with value, and you can set some items to local storage or to session storage. All this stuff works. Yeah, is supported. Few words about page objects. In Selenide, it's very easy to create a page object. For example, like page object for Google search might look like this. You just create a class called page, like Google page or search page, something like that. And you create public method that does something on this page, performs some action on this page, for example, search. And internals of this page object are very, very similar, simple and readable. As you see, you don't need to use annotations, page factories, anything. It's very simple object that is clear how it works. Yeah, no factory, no annotations, just code, just simple code, good old code. Many people still very want to declare elements as fields and use annotations, and yes, it's still possible. Why not? If you very want, you can declare elements as fields and mark them with this annotation. Fine by. Yeah, it's also supported. Why not? Yeah, still possible. Few words about mobile applications. Selenide also allows you to write tests for mobile using Appium. Yeah. And here is a sub-project of Selenide which integrates Selenide and Appium. And here another project in GitHub that brings some examples, some like really working examples, and how a simple test could look like. Just write a test JUnit or testng, whatever. Again, everything is very similar. You just find elements using name or some Android accessors or iOS XPath, whatever, and just click or type or select options. Yeah, something like that. In this case, we click 2 + 4 and verify that in the end, the element Android widget that should contain the result, like actually does contain the expected result. So very easy, simple, readable test. Everything is fine. Again, you can write page objects, everything. The only tricky thing in mobile tests is setup. Okay, let's first check how page object could look like. Yeah, sometimes you want to reuse the same test or the same page object for Android, iOS, and maybe even web, because like it's reasonable to have the same logic in Android and iOS. So logic is the same, is page structure is the same, and the test might be the same. And the only thing that is different is locators. And yes, in Selenide, it's possible to write a page object with all three annotations, one for web, one for Android, and one for iOS. And Selenide will detect which platform you are using currently and which selector to pick up like right now in your list. So this is how you can write like reusable test for all three platforms, if you wish, if you need. It's not always needed, but if you need, yes, you can do it like this. Page is a static method, like for initialization of such a page object. Yeah, you can even reuse test code between all three platforms, maybe. And this was the last part, how to run Selenide tests in cloud. The point is that what I personally recommend is running tests locally on your machine, or in other words, running tests and the browser in the same machine. For me, this is the fastest way and most stable way to run tests. I recommend it. But very often, people are strange. People often want to run tests on one machine, but browsers on another machine in clouds. I don't know why. For me, it's often a bad idea, but still people do want to do it. And they like to use different cloud providers for that. There are multiple cloud providers that allow you running browsers remotely. For example, Lambda Test or Source Labs or Test Containers. I guess there is both Test Containers in clouds, something, Browser Stack, and probably many more. Yeah. These are providers that I personally tried to work with. Yeah, all these are supported. And how to do that? How to run a browser remotely? In this case, in case of Lambda Test, just to demonstrate, you need to usually, here is where complexity comes. You need to declare some environment variables using credentials for these cloud providers. Every cloud provider is usually paid. It's not for free. You need to buy some package, and you need to provide username and password or access key. And in the beginning of your test, you need to set some additional options to Selenide. First of all, remote URL of this cloud provider, and you need to see some additional properties to this cloud provider, like version of browser and so on, so your credentials. And for example, if you use chain 5, this setup code might look like this, something like that. So it's actually still quite simple. It's still very, very easy to use, something like that. Just to set few configuration properties to Selenide. And your cloud will work. Let me check. We have like few minutes more. Let me check if we can see how it works. Yeah, here a sample project for Lambda Test Cloud Provider. We have a bunch of tests here. Let me make it bigger. Yeah, and we have one JUnit extension that is executed before every test, and it does all its setup. So it sets the remote URL of cloud provider. It sets some capabilities, and the tests are executed in the cloud. By the way, if we try to comment out this code and again run the simple test, now this test will be executed locally. I hope so. Now the test is executed locally. And by the way, we can now even run it in debug mode and observe that everything is good. Yeah. Now the test opens this initial page and finds some element using text users. So it will click this user elements. Let's see. Now we appear on the users page. And now the test will find all the user tags and check that there's at least 8 of these tags. Here is this option. Yeah, there is actually more than 8. And now it will check that there is more than 20 Selenide users. So it will check this section. Yeah, more than 20 users here. Fine, the test is green. Let's check how it works if the test fails. For example, if we put abnormally big number here, let's look how the test will fail. First of all, it wakes up to 4 seconds because of smart waitings. And now the test failed. And let's see that error message is actually very, very clean and readable. Error message says at list size is not matched. You expected so many, but actually was so many. And that's why the test failed. And you can click the screenshot. You can see that it's fine. Okay, because this test page was very, very long. Yeah, I need to increase the size. So this is a full screenshot of the page. You can scroll and see everything and investigate why the test failed. So it was a very readable error message. Yeah. If you like Selenide and want to try more, then the next step is probably to watch my previous video about migrating your existing project from like pure Selenium to Selenide. It was kind of workshop. And if you have any questions, please ask me. I'm always ready to answer your questions, to discuss. And I'm always open for your suggestions. If you have any ideas what might be improved in Selenide, please submit pull requests or write me directly. I'm always glad to hear all the suggestions. So we have 5 minutes for questions. Okay, I will read the questions and answer them. First of all, how do you convert IT, this is integration test request, from Selenium to Selenide, and can we use the tests in Selenium grid? Yes, you can convert easily Selenium tests, existing Selenium code base to Selenide. I showed it in my presentation that I showed on my last slide. And you can even avoid migrating the whole project at once, but you can migrate gradually. You can start writing new tests, only new tests in Selenide, and keep old tests in Selenium. It's totally possible, not a problem. And yes, in Selenide you can run tests in Selenium grid as well. Yes, it's supported. The next question: how do you use integration tests with BDD or Cucumber? Technically, it's possible. You can write Selenide tests together with Cucumber or any other BDD framework. It's possible, not problems. We have even some examples in GitHub again, github.com/Selenide examples. There is Cucumber project. I personally don't like BDD. I personally think that in most cases it's overused or like misused and creates more hassle than it's useful. But yes, if you want, you can do it. The next question: we have our own app core, a test API for it, and a custom WebDriver implementation through this API. Is it possible to use Selenide with a custom WebDriver implementation? Wow, it's very interesting. Yes, it's totally possible to use Selenide with any WebDriver implementation. Absolutely, it's possible. You can give any instance of WebDriver to Selenide and use it. Yeah, technically. No, not problems. Not a problem. Next question. Not a question, just a big thanks, and to say we will visit Tallinn after the TestCon. Glad to see it. Yes, sure, you're welcome. Estonia is sometimes very beautiful, especially at winter when we have a lot of snow. Not in the rain, unfortunately. Yeah. The last question is: does the download method works with a remote WebDriver or Selenium grid out of the box? Yes, sometimes. I mean, we support specifically, we support downloading files from Selenium grid and Selenoid, these two. In other remote cloud providers like Lambda Test and so on, some of Selenide methods works, some cannot work. By default, the default Selenide method works in all cloud providers, but it only downloads files like in some cases, not always. So downloading actually is very, very complex and big topic. It deserves a dedicated presentation on a conference. Yeah, it's not easy. But short answer, yes, we do support. Yes, we can download files, but not always, unfortunately. Yeah. So I guess it was last questions, and we are out of time, I guess. So thank you for your attention, and yeah, again, ask me anything you want to ask. You can ask personally in Twitter, in Telegram, and whatever, and I'm glad to discuss all the questions you have. Thank you for your attention.